All right, our next video is about politics and Southern conditions. We're going to talk about the different sides that were all fighting for power during this time of Reconstruction. Okay, MC6, okay, this is what you need to copy. It's in green, that's the question. Post-Civil War political problems. So post means after, okay? So what kind of political problems did we have after the Civil War? All right, after the Civil War, Republicans controlled national and southern state governments, okay? Republican southern state governments increased taxes 300% on Southerners, and this was done by the carpetbaggers. So remember, what happened was, because of the Civil War, all the Southerners, white Southerners that supported the South, they got disenfranchised, which, if you remember from the vocabulary video, means that you legally have your right to vote taken away. But that's also your right to run for office. Well, a lot of people still wanted to vote for white people, okay, white politicians. And the party that freed the slaves were the Republican Party. So since white Southern Democrats could not run for office, white Northern Republicans, called carpetbaggers, threw everything they could into their cheaply made carpet bag luggage. That's why they call it that. And they came down south and ran for political office, and black people voted them in because they were Republicans, and the Republicans freed the slaves, okay? So anyway, these evil carpetbaggers came down here and they stole everything that wasn't nailed down, okay? Like I said, they raised taxes 300% on the Southerners. They stole plantations. They taxed people to death here, pretty much. And there was a lot of fraud and corruption. And there was a group of Southerners that helped them do this. These were men that typically didn't have anything to lose. They were the poor men of the South. They said, well, you know what? If the Northern Republicans are stealing from the rich Southern Democrats, and I'm a poor Southern Democrat, I'm just going to help the Republicans and get rich. And these people were called scalawags, okay? All right, so moving on, we have a political cartoon here. We haven't really done any political cartoons yet. Since you guys are not in class, I'll just have to explain it myself, okay? So part of Reconstruction said that the North, okay, the Northern Army, the Union Army, had to occupy the South to keep order, to make sure that a second Civil War did not break out. But the other reason they were doing that was to control the Southern governments, okay? So that way the carpetbaggers could come in and steal everything. So in this picture, you have a carpetbagger. You could tell that because he's sitting on a giant carpet bag, okay? And he is being helped by Union soldiers, okay? In the back, we have burned down buildings. That tells you about the condition of the South. And right here is the focal point of the whole cartoon. This lady right here is, it says the Solid South. I know you guys can't really see that probably too well. So the South is portrayed as a beautiful, pure white lady in white clothes. Like she did nothing wrong, okay? She's the best thing ever, according to the artist. And that probably tells you that the artist here was a Southerner that didn't like what the Northerners were doing. Didn't like the carpetbaggers and the scalawags. Now you notice the Union troops, they are standing on nice smooth ground, while the South is on really jagged rocks in a muddy street, and she's barefoot, okay? So the focus of the meaning of the cartoon is that the South is this virtuous lady who is being forced to carry the weight of the carpetbaggers, and who is stealing all the stuff from the South and shoving it in their carpet bags, okay? So that's what that is about, okay? All right, the next part, y'all, this is going to be with us for the rest of the year. I'd really like you to watch this and really pay attention, really learn this. There are 3 civil rights amendments from the 1800s. You really need to remember them. They will be on your LEAP test. They're one of they're the 3, probably the 3 most important ones that you should remember this year as far as constitutional amendments. And there's a trick to remembering them, okay? The trick is 13, 14, 15, free citizens vote, okay? And it makes sense because you get freedom, then you become a citizen, then you get the right to vote. All right, so the 13th Amendment gives freedom to all black people in the United States. This is what ended slavery officially, okay? Some people say it was the Emancipation Proclamation in 1863 by Abraham Lincoln, but the truth of the matter is that only freed about half the slaves, okay? Probably not even half the slaves. The 13th Amendment definitely freed all the slaves. So that's when it really ended. 14th Amendment defines what an American citizen is. And in that definition, it says that anybody born on American soil is an American citizen. It also says that all American citizens should have equal protection under the law, no matter who they are. So whether you're black, white, Chinese, as long as you were born here in America, you should have the same rights as everybody else. That's what the 14th Amendment Equal Protection Clause says. Now the 15th Amendment says black men get the right to vote. Not all black people, only black men. Women will not get the right to vote until 1920 with the 19th Amendment. So ladies, it's been officially 100 years since you've had the right to vote, okay? All right, the 15th Amendment specifically says votes cannot be denied because of race, right? So does that mean that this is ironclad? Can a vote be denied for another reason other than race? See, the 15th Amendment is poorly written, okay? It says you can't be denied a vote based on, what about your ability to read? How about your ability to pay a tax? So once the white Southern Democrats see how the 15th Amendment is written, they do everything they can to subvert the 16th Amendment to make it not actually meaningful, okay? So take a look at that. So some of those things were poll taxes, literacy tests, like I said, okay? We have a political cartoon here. We'll leave this one alone. It's too hard to see over a camera. So we have the 15th Amendment in Roman numerals, okay? X is 10, V is 5. And it says, "Shoo fly, don't bother me," okay? We have a black man. He is putting his ballot in the ballot box. That's what this is right here. And he's got flies all around his head. And these are actually the governors of the states that don't want them to vote. Okay, and he's basically saying, because of the 15th Amendment, I get to vote whether you think I can or not. Okay. All right. So let's talk about freedmen a little bit. Okay. So after the war, a lot of black people did not want to stay in the South, not at all. Okay. They wanted to leave. Now the question is, after the war, why did black people leave? That is basically the question on the test. Okay. Multiple choice, question 8. All right, one reason, to leave the area of slavery. If you grew up as a slave your whole life and now you have freedom, would you want to stay on the same plantation and look at your former master every day? No, probably not. So a lot of people left for that. Find family members. Okay, unfortunately, one of the worst things about slavery is that family members were often sold off without the permission of the family. So oftentimes this was a punishment. So if you didn't want to work, well, the master's going to sell your children, okay? So now slavery is over. What is the first thing a bunch of parents and children do? Well, they roam around the South and start looking for each other. However, there's a problem. There's no such thing as internet. You can't do a Google search and see where your daughter lives, okay? So they literally had to walk around on foot around the South for years. And unfortunately, sometimes they never found their loved ones, or all they found was a headstone, okay? All right, find factory jobs in the Northeast. The Northeast of America, talking about New York, Boston, Chicago, that area was booming at this time. Millions of factory jobs. We were going through something that we're going to learn about later called the Industrial Revolution, okay? Bunch of good paying, well, relatively good paying factory jobs, okay? A couple more reasons. The exodusters, okay? Y'all remember from last chapter. A lot of young black men left the South to find their 160 free acres promised to them by the Homestead Act. So that's another good reason. And one more reason that most people don't know, it's not in most history books actually. White Southern Democrats normally the Klan, had started rumors that slavery was going to come back. So they were trying to intimidate black people to leave the country, not the country, but leave the South, by saying that, you know, slavery is coming back. And it worked in a lot of cases. So right here, we have some young black men. Their job, actually, this is a colorized photo from the 1870s. Their job was to go to Civil War battlefields and find dead soldiers and ship them back to whichever side. And they got paid by the body, okay? So that was one job available. Another pretty lucrative and common job was working at the shipping docks. This is a colorized photo from the Mississippi River around New Orleans, okay? They're unloading grain, they're unloading hay from these giant steamships, and a lot of black people like to get those jobs as well. Okay. All right, so after the Civil War, black people were interested in a few things here. De facto segregation instead of integration. The primary social institution became the church, and black preachers were community leaders. The day after the Civil War ended, black people and white people were not, for the most part, ready to sit there and hold hands and hug each other and talk about equality, okay? Black people typically wanted a segregated community. Now, we think of segregation as something forced on black people by the whites, and that is true. However, the black people in the early days, not later on in the 60s and stuff, in the early days, they thought it was a good idea, and the reason why is because if they could have segregation, they could have their own communities without white people being involved, and black people could become leaders of the black community. Preachers were often the leaders, okay? That's actually a question on the test, okay? Who is the leader of the black community normally? It's preachers. One problem black people had that they solved very quickly is that at the end of slavery, only 10% of black people knew how to read, which means that 90% of people that were black were illiterate, okay? That's the inverse of the data there. Well, they concentrated on education. Black people after the Civil War saw education as their ticket to freedom. And they were right. Within 40 years, they flipped this. And 90% of black people knew how to read instead of 90% of black people not knowing how to read. 40 years and it flipped the statistic. That is an amazing amount of progress, okay? So, black politicians wanted to rebuild the South and establish peace, okay? They did not want revenge against the white planters. They wanted to be left alone. They wanted to be in power of their own community, and they wanted peace with whites so they could have a good economy and everybody could make money and we could rebuild America, okay?